I'm sure I have talked on this subject before. You could probably find a video from me in my podcasts in which I discuss this particular subject, but I really feel the need to discuss the idea of seeking perfection on the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt, and today is Thursday, the 27th of January of 2022. Welcome to everyone who's here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, on CloudHub, on Minds, minds.com, on Locals, if you happen to be catching me there, locals.com as well. Hope you're having a good day today. Remember, Rumble is my preferred platform, though these days it's not nearly as big a thing as it has been in past, since I find that I'm getting a lot more play on other platforms. Again, the subject for today is going to be seeking perfection, and I'm going to take just a minute to run through my notes to kind of give you an idea what today is talking about. Dan Bongino likes to use a term for certain topics he discusses. The term is evergreen ideas or concepts. There's one that I've almost certainly covered before, but I want to do so again. I always try to find new angles of attack on various things that I talk about, particularly if I talk about the same thing more than once. I'm not sure that will happen on this one, but I still think it's important to bring it up again regardless. I have a son who I make mention of periodically. I bring him up because he deals with autism. On a level most people will never understand, very likely myself included, since I'm pretty sure even if I am autistic and I don't know one way or another, I'm not nearly as much so as he is. I've told a number of stories on him, about him. And one example is that he was in diapers into his 7th year of life. Now, he's totally done with that as far as I can tell to this point, and that's quite okay. It just was kind of interesting to deal with. Another, that he still cannot read or write in a meaningful way, at 9. 9 years of age, he still can't read and write well. The hope is that he'll get to the point where he can do that. That, just may take him longer than it does for a lot of folks. The challenging reality, that may never happen. That considered, you need to understand one thing above all others. It's my intent to continue to act like he can and will accomplish good things like reading and writing. And obviously, those aren't the only things, and maybe he won't ever get very good at that, and it's just something we'll have to deal with. In fact, just as for myself, I intend to point him in the direction of perfection to the very best of my ability. As far as I'm concerned, that's something every parent should do for their children, and it doesn't matter if they're autistic or they're not. That's just something parents should do. To be clear, I don't expect to reach perfection for myself on this earth, nor do I expect him to do so, nor anyone else for that matter. That doesn't mean we ought not aim for it regardless. Why aim for things you cannot achieve? Why? Because along the way, there's no telling what you'll manage to get to. There's just no telling. If you set yourself to hit a target well in excess of your expected ability, you may not ever do so. Then again, you might. But remember, even if you don't, you're likely to surpass goals you set for yourself that you're relatively sure you'll achieve. Right? Those goals are not set in stone necessarily, but they're things that you can kind of get relatively sure of as you go on. But you're going to potentially achieve better things than that if you set your sights above what you think you can do. Can we reach perfection? Not as far as I can tell. Does that mean we ought not seek it anyway? Why on earth should anyone assume so? I think that I can and should spend more time seeking things that are outside of my ability. And let me just tell you something. I have this boring story that I used to tell people. Sorry, you're going to have to live with it. It's kind of boring. I went through high school. There weren't really computers at the time. A little bit. We just started to get them in. The old Tandy Radio Shack TRS-80 Model 1 and 3 is what we had to work with at the time. But people learned to type. They learned keyboarding or typing, or we called it typing at the time. That's all it was. And I learned on an IBM Selectric 3, except I didn't, you see. I did not learn to type. My typing teacher promised that she would pass me through the basic beginning typing level, basic level stuff, if I didn't ever take the advanced class. So long as I promised never to take the advanced class, because I was so bad a typist. So I went in the military. I became a communications computer systems operator. It was about halfway through my time in, so about 4.5 years in. And I started working in communications, and I was promised that I wouldn't have to be able to type to do that job. By the way, I flunked out of typing when I first went in the military and was supposed to be an administrative specialist, which just didn't work well for me at all. That said, though, I ended up in communications computer systems operations, and the place that I went to, I worked in communications, and we sent messages, and what we did all day was type those messages. And what did we type them on? A Western Union teletype. If you ever get the chance, look into what those look like. But they have keys that are, I don't even know, 1.5 inches high, probably almost closer to 3 inches high. And then they have keys that are probably 1 inch high, or slightly less, and they're round and they're set separately apart. This is where I actually learned to type. I spent 8 hours a day for a couple of months working to get up to 35 words a minute. I never thought I would be able to do that. I never thought that would be possible for me. But the reality is, doing it over and over and over again showed me not only that that was possible for me, but it actually showed me later on that I could figure out how to play certain musical instruments as a result of figuring out that it was about muscle memory for those things, and that's all I needed to be able to do. The point is, even though you wouldn't count those as aims towards perfection, the realization is when you aim for something that you didn't think you can do, lots of times you will find you can. You'll find that you can do those things. I didn't ever think I'd be able to type. I probably type better than 80 words a minute by this point. And I don't even really think about it when I do it. And I started out thinking in letters and ended up thinking in words. And now I just don't really hardly think about it at all when I type. I just do what I'm doing. Same thing applies to playing musical instruments. You figure out how to accomplish certain things with a given musical instrument, and you let your muscles take over and let them do what needs to happen, and learn how to translate notes in theory into notes in practice. Okay? So this is kind of what you need to understand. The higher you set your goals, the more amazing you're likely to find your results to be. Not because you're going to accomplish perfection, because that's probably not going to happen. But I'll tell you this, the only way you're ever going to know, the only way my autistic son is ever going to know if he's going to learn to read or write or do math or whatever it happens to be, speak in ways that people expect, quote, normal people to speak, the only way that's going to happen for him is if he tries. And I suggest that in general, you should always try for more than you think that you can accomplish. And I'll say this again. The ultimate answer to that is strive for perfection. Because you know what? If you never reach it, you will certainly be better off than if you didn't try at all. I pretty much promise. I'm going to say this again. This is something that people have said any number of times, and I'm going to say it again. You didn't, if you have kids, unless you knew that your kid was never going to walk, and maybe even then, you didn't stop trying to get your kid to walk. That's not how that worked. You sat there. My kid at 7 years old, still in a diaper, I did not assume he was going to be in a diaper for the rest of his life. And it took a lot of work for him, and a lot of work for me, and a lot of work for some teachers who really need credit here. It took a lot of work to get him past those diapers, but these days he uses the bathroom like any other normal kid. And that's really a wonderful thing for him. And the point is, if we hadn't reached well beyond what I thought he might end up being in the course of time, he would never have gotten to that place. Okay, now this is something I could talk on for a long time, but instead I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here. This is the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt, and today is Thursday, the 27th of January of 2022. That means tomorrow will be Friday, that beginning of the Sabbath and the end of the work week for a lot of folks. Friday, the 28th of January, 2022. And again, the beginning of the Sabbath at the end of the day on Friday, the end of sundown on Friday as well. So if you're a Sabbath observer, hope you have a good Sabbath tomorrow. Some people, I know my brother is traveling and he normally would try and observe the Sabbath. He's not really going to get the chance tomorrow, I don't think. But in any case, welcome to, or thank you, blah, blah, blah. Welcome, right? Welcome is true too, of course. But thank you for everybody who's here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, on CloudHub, on minds.com, on Locals. And remember, that's Clout, C-L-O-U-T Hub, and BitChute, C-H-U-T-E, as well. If you happen to see my content there, obviously anywhere else you happen to see it, like I say, locals.com. I think it's Kurt's Religion and Politics is where you can find me. I haven't looked to see how that all works out to this point. Rumble is sort of my preferred platform at this point, and you can give me a boxing glove or a Rumble on Rumble if you're offered the opportunity. You can also give me a plus or minus on that platform to show that you like or do not like my content. Obviously, you can give me a like or dislike on other platforms, such as YouTube, where you can give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. If there is the availability of comments on a given platform, you can comment, and if I put the content out there particularly, but even if I didn't, I'll try and kind of keep apprised of whatever comments are out there, and I will try to act accordingly, including if I feel it's necessary or reasonable to respond. Subject for today has been seeking perfection. Tomorrow's subject is going to be vouchers and scholarships, and I want to talk about the very important differences between those two on tomorrow. I hope you're doing well today and that everything is going well for you. It's cold here, but overall it's not horribly bad. And hopefully we will see you again on tomorrow's edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This podcast was recorded on Thursday, the 27th of January of 2021. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I hope you found it entertaining or instructional, or maybe both. If you want to see more from me, you can go to blogs.kpschubert.com. That's blogs.kpschubert.com. I am on Twitter, Parler, and Minds.com. My handle on each of those is @kpschubert. That's @kpschubert. I have a Rumble and a YouTube channel. They are the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble and YouTube. I have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is Kurt's Religion and Politics as well. I am on Patreon. If you want to support me, that's one of the better places you can do that. And you will find me at Kurt's Religion and Politics on Patreon. I have a podcast. The podcast is podcasts with an S, .kpschubert.com. That's podcasts.kpschubert.com. I think you should be able to find me with relative ease on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify as well. The best way I find to do that is to look for Kurt's Religion and Politics. You can try to use the Daily Summation. I find that it doesn't work as well as a general rule, but you can always try that. I'm glad to have you aboard today, and hopefully we will see you again tomorrow.